4 of How to Live a Prosperous Life. We've been exploring the Edwin Gaines book, The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. I sort of retitled it, The 4 Spiritual Laws of Enoughness. The 4 Spiritual Laws of Wholeness. To live this kind of vibrant life where you know that you are enough. There are enough relationships, there is enough money, there is enough time, there is more than enough. Instead of the message that a lot of us got, that there isn't enough. There's never enough hours in the day. Every December we say, where did the year go? So it's subtle things sometimes and small things, and sometimes it's messages that live with us our whole life, that I am not enough and that there is not enough. Boy, if there were 2 messages that we could overturn in consciousness, those would be 2 great ones to start with. You are enough. I am enough, no matter what you were told. And there is enough. Most of us here in the room have been around a few years. Somehow you managed to get here. Somehow you still are alive, you fed yourself, everyone appears to have clothes on. We're doing pretty well if you think about it. And yet there can be this track that is running that is not enough. That's what we're going to try to root out today and replace with, you are enough. There is enough. And the 4 laws of prosperity that Edwin teaches us are 4 of the most powerful ways I've ever found to do that. So let's catch everybody up. For the last 3 weeks we've covered, first, to have a purpose in your life. I borrow from Eckhart Tolle that your divine purpose is your inner purpose, not your outer purpose. What you do with your time in your life is one thing. Everyone has the same inner purpose, according to Myrtle Fillmore, to be God expressing in the world. So that's our basic job here, is to express all of the goodness in the world that we can. Secondly, to set goals, to turn something around in your life especially. It is helpful to set a powerful intention, write it down, share it with someone else to stay accountable. Over and over again, study after study says that's how people attain their goals. It's sort of a law. It's sort of just the thing that we need to do. And then the third thing that she taught us is about forgiveness. That if we are blocked by these boulders on our back of all the hurts that we've had and all the injustices, if we walk around with that pack, we don't have the energy. We can't even use our hands to be out in the world because we are carrying this with us. So we do all that we can to forgive. It doesn't mean condoning a bad act. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in a situation, but it does mean that we get out of the past and we get into the present and we say, okay, that happened. Now what? Now what? I'm going to live from this present moment going forward. And then comes her powerful first teaching, which I've put at the end so that y'all didn't freak out. And it is the teaching of, dare I say, tithing. She said it. I didn't say it. Now it's up to Gail. Come on up. It's about tithing. Now everybody breathe. Oh, tithing. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, we are. Because it's a powerful tool that I want you to know about. It's also a tool and a practice that most of us struggle with. Most of us will never pick it up in our life. It's just that simple. Yet, it can be powerfully transformative. So we're going to talk about it. Especially because, again, it is the first thing that she talks about in her book. And she's a wonderful teacher to follow, Edwin Gaines. You can find her videos on YouTube and you can see her herself. And she has a powerful story about starting out in poverty, not knowing how she will pay her bills. And with the little money that she had, tithing from that and watching things unfold for her. The first year that she tithed, she tells the story that by the end of the year she was making $100,000. And that was many years ago. And there are many other stories like that of people that have finally decided to embrace this. And someone in between services told me their story, that they decided to be a little more generous. They were feeling stuck, and so they gave $5 more in the weeks after they realized this. And not long after that, they got a new job with a 10% raise. Which is interesting that tithing is about a tenth. It's like God has this great sense of humor that says, I'm going to actually give you what I was teaching you could give. You didn't think you could? Here it is. That was a story just from this morning. And what we're moving towards is this divine life that Edwene describes for us. She has a lot of faith in us, and so do I. And she says that every single one of us has everything it takes to begin today to live our lives at the level where they work all the time. And in every area of our life, all it takes is conscious intention. God wants us to do more, to have more, and to play big. That is an affirmation about the life that you are meant to live. Now, where do we usually get our messages around money? Who taught you about money?
Parents.
Parents. And what did your parents teach you about money?
Save.
Save? Nice message. What else did your parents teach you?
Not enough.
Not enough.
There's not enough.
Use it wisely.
Use it wisely.
Think before you spend it.
Think before you spend it. Think before you spend it. Not drink. I got this message. Money doesn't grow on trees. Someone else got that message in years. Yes. I didn't get a lot of messages around money. I do remember that when the credit card bills came, it was usually not a happy day in our house. I do remember that. Now, some people maybe grew up and they were taught to save some money. How many of you were taught to save? How many of you were told you had to put money aside to give away? Two of us. In the whole room, 2 of us were taught, save some money to give to other folks. There we go. So no wonder this is how we've been taught. It's like we are monkeys. Do you know how you catch a monkey? You catch a monkey by putting food in a jar that has a narrow opening. And so the monkey puts the hand in, grabs the food, and won't let go. This is a true story. You can look it up on YouTube. There's a video of a monkey, and he won't let this go even when his captor comes up behind him, puts a harness around him because he's going to go train the monkey. The monkey still cannot let go to take the hand out. Sometimes we're monkeys, and we have gotten something, and we grab it, and we will not let it go. And it's in the letting go that we get the gift, that we are free. We are not bound by grabbing onto this. That is a spiritual principle of the law of giving and receiving. Instead of grasping and hoarding, that as we give, our hands are open to continue to receive more. Our hearts are open to continue to receive. Tithing and generosity is about openness. And it's about faith. It's about placing faith that God is our source. Not my job, not my spouse, not Social Security, not that 401k. God is the ultimate source of divine ideas that creates everything. And this teaching of tithing is found in most religious traditions. And there are a number of different sources, and today I'm going to share with you from the book of Malachi. It's the most common one that's quoted when we talk about tithing. But where does this teaching of tithing come from? And so from the book of Malachi 3:7, God is talking, and God says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Bring the tithe into the storehouse so there will be food. And then God says, test me in this. God actually says, oh, don't just believe me, test me in this. Thus says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be enough room enough to store it. So it's a contract from God saying, bring the tithes, which means 10%, bring 10% of the crops at that time into the storehouse so that there will be food in God's house. And I guarantee you, test me on this, the floodgates are going to open. The give and take. And on a first level, that's what we're reading about. So the basic of tithing says, take 1/10 of your earnings off the top from the beginning. Give where you're spiritually fed. Give into the storehouse of God, wherever you find that, your church, your yoga group, whatever it may be. Give it there so that it is in a spiritual place and you will be blessed 100-fold. You put in 10, you get 100. You put in 10%, what do you get to keep?
90.
90. We have a math scholar in the room. You're putting in 10, but we get so focused on what we're giving away, we've forgotten that the first blessing of tithing that I take is to say, my gosh, the fact that I have $1 is because of God. The fact that I even have this income is because of God in the world. God that creates all, created that. And so I give thanks and I acknowledge that source. And I give into the field of spirituality because it matters to me. Now here's what was happening in this story before we got to that part. It's good to know the context of a Bible reading. And so the book of Malachi is very much about the laws and setting it down and reminding people, this is how God works. You want a better life. You want to know how to express more and have more of God. Here's how. Here's the instruction manual. And a reminder over and over again to the people, you got to keep on it. You got to keep on it. And so, before this we read, God's telling the priests, return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord. But you ask, the Lord says, how are we to return? Will a mere mortal rob God? And then God says, yes, you rob me. Ooh, God's a little snarky this day. Yes, you rob me, he's saying to the priests. He, she, it is saying to the priests. But you ask, how are we robbing you? In tithes and offerings. You are under a curse because you are robbing me of tithes and offerings. What was actually happening here, it is believed at this time, is that the priests were taking some of the tithe. They had their little hand in the kitty there. And so God is sort of, I caught you. So that's what's happening on the surface level. And tithes at that time most likely was talking about crops. What you had was crops that you would bring in, and you would have those, and you would bring the food into the storehouse so that the priests could be fed, literally. That's level one. Now we, metaphysicians, also like to go deeper onto that and say, what else could it tell me besides crops, beside priests 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago? It has a spiritual meaning for me. So bring of my substance into God's storehouse. Continue to give into that which is God out in the world. And I will be blessed. As you give, so shall you receive. It's reiterating that law for us, the law of giving and receiving. And it is a law. The more we grasp and hold in, we literally cannot be open to take. If I had a present to give you and your hands were like this, it would be really hard. So God is encouraging us. The universe is telling us this is how it works. And Edwin says to us that this is, if I can flip my page here, that the gift of tithing is this. Putting God first in your finances is a dynamic act of courage. You didn't know you came to hear about courage today. It's a dynamic act of courage, and when you do so, your faith and ability to move forward increases 100-fold. There is something exponential about tithing. I don't know why. It just sort of is. So I had been a giver for a long time. I was giving into my church, and then I started to hear about this tithing thing, very skeptical, not on board. I was giving, that was enough. But gosh darn it, they kept talking about it, and then Edwene Gaines came to church, and boy did she talk about it. It was first and foremost in the workshop. I stayed one Sunday afternoon for 3 hours to listen. She was amazing, she was mesmerizing, and she was relentless. Tithing, tithing, tithing. You must tithe. If you want blessings, you must tithe. Someone would tell their story. Oh, this is happening. Are you tithing? No. Honey, you gotta tithe. And she'd move on to the next person. She tells a story in her book that she went to a teacher early on in her practice, and she was struggling with someone, and the teacher said, "Are you tithing?" And she said, "No." And he said, basically, "Get out of my office. I got a bunch of people here who are willing to work the practice, to use the teachings. I'm working with them. When you're ready to be serious, come back and see me." This is what people that are floating in the deep end of the pool wrestle with and talk about and do eventually. And it takes courage. So when I started out and was very skeptical, I kind of set it on the shelf, a couple of things happened. One was I wanted to join the board of my church. And so they asked me, "Do you tithe?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Then you can't be on the board." Wow. They took it that seriously. You really had to tithe to be on the board. They said that. I'm like, wow, I can't be on the board. They must really take this seriously. And then it dawned on me that meant those 6 people were tithing. And that they were real people just like me. They had kids, they had mortgages, they had normal jobs. And somehow they were giving 10%. Which of course it sort of dawned on me, well yeah, a percentage is a percentage. They're just giving out of whatever it is. And so I thought, But I still wasn't sure until I took a 4Ts class. And so I committed, because I was really on this path. And I had done a year's worth of the quest, every Saturday studying. I was doing all sorts of things. This one remained in the corner. So I took the 4Ts. And one of the things the 4Ts tells you is, if you have to eat a frog, do it quickly. If you have to eat a pile of frogs, eat the first frog first. Tithing is the frog. If you really want to get on the spiritual bandwagon, says Edwene, says most spiritual teachers, when you tithe, you are jumping into the deep end and you are saying, I'm going to do the big one first, which is why it's first in our book. Now, there are those who say tithing is dead, and it may be on its way out. It may be an antiquated teaching that no longer works, that people will just no longer do. It's like saying, well, prayer is on its way out, church is on its way out. Well, it may be on its way out, but it doesn't mean it doesn't work. And I have yet to meet a person, anyone who has told me, I tithed, and it didn't work for me. I didn't feel better. It made things worse. I've yet to hear it. Everyone says, wow, I had no idea how free I could feel once I got over the fear. And so, at this point in my talk, I usually come along to my yeah, but section. Yeah, but. So that sounds good. I hear what you're saying, Reverend Elizabeth. Yeah, but I couldn't possibly. Yeah, but you don't know about my situation. But I do. I don't know what the details are, but I know we all have our challenges. I know we do. When I was tithing and I was going through a tough time, one of my friends said to me, why don't you just tithe towards the end, it was when I was in school and I couldn't pay I wasn't sure how I was gonna pay my tuition. She said, well, why don't you tithe to yourself? I'm like, well, no, that really isn't the point, but thanks. And I've had people tell me that. I'm tithing to my retirement fund. Okay? But what I found out was I had not been tithing when I was going through that, and I was looking for where the tuition was coming from, and I realized I had some extra income, and it wasn't much, but I had forgotten to tithe on it. So I got clean with myself, my commitment, and I tithed on that, and within a week, I had gotten a scholarship for the final year of seminary so that all my tuition was paid. And then the woman in between tells me the story that she started giving more, and something turned around. So find people that tithe and ask them to tell you their story, and they will tell you an amazing story. Just like Edwene, that she went from nothing to $100,000 in that first year. When I was taking the 4 T's, there was a woman who was having trouble finding a job. She found a job after she started tithing. Another one who was looking for a relationship, found a relationship. And it takes time. It's not always an instant, but what it is about growing in consciousness. And that's what it was for me, to take that step in faith. And I also like to come to the 2.0 section of my talk. So this is tithing. We've come up to this point. This is pretty traditional. This is what we may have heard before. And now there's tithing 2.0, which I'm seeing happen in Unity churches and across the United States here. And we're starting to refine this teaching. And we're starting to separate it out, that there is a spiritual component and there is a math component to church. Often these two things go together. You're supposed to tithe, you give to your church, it goes together. And so naturally some people say, yeah, you're just teaching me this because you need me to fund your church. And I say, if that's the block, then give somewhere else. Then don't give here. If you don't trust me, if you don't trust the church to say this is why this is an important practice, then it's not for that. This is a spiritual practice, a deep one. And on the other side of the coin is there is a church to maintain. There is a ministry that we are in the business of sustaining. And so as we grow in ownership of how to sustain a church, and we call that, as we get everybody understanding the teaching of ownership and equity, that we all understand what it takes to run a church, which is about $40 a week a person. I don't make the numbers up. That's just how it works nationally across the country. About $40 a person. That's the math. And if that's taken care of, then we don't even need to talk about that anymore. And instead, what we talk about is the blessing of this spiritual teaching. So we're trying to tease these two concepts apart. There's our church that we love and we want to see going. And then there is a spiritual teaching for you. A gift that is waiting for you to unwrap it. And I want that for you. I really do. And I know the fear that it takes you have to get over this fear. And all I can tell you is I've been doing it for about 15, 20 years, and I'm still doing it. I couldn't imagine stopping it. There is something to the exchange that happens in consciousness to say, God is first here for me. And if the deep end of the pool is too much, and I know that for most of us it will be, then start in the shallow end. Edwene's teaching is different. She's like, you gotta do this. And I have learned over time that it's so important that you at least expose yourself to the possibility of the blessing of tithing. That if you start in the shallow end and you say, here's where I am, this is what I give, X. Let me try for the next month or whatever period you pick to do X plus. Whether it's $1, whether it's $5, whether it's $10. Something that moves me in the direction. And that is actually how I started. I started with, okay, I was giving less than 1%. And so I decided, maybe instead of 10, I'll start with 1%. And I did that, and I didn't die. So I did 1.5%. I continued to survive, and then I slowly moved up, and then around 4 or 5%, I took the tithing class, and I was like, well, if I could do this, I could do this other. Let me just see what happens for 10 weeks. So start where you can, always. Start where you can, and see if there isn't a blessing for you to find. And again, if you read through her book here, and you hear about how setting a purpose, setting goals, forgiving, and giving generously can turn her life around, and so many lives that she talks about in this book here, by taking on these teachings, because that's what we do here. We are a practical church. We don't teach it if it isn't practical. We teach it like prayer, like meditation, like forgiveness. We teach it because it works. And so it's my job to share that with you, even though this tithing especially, can be a tough one. Or maybe not. Because so often what we're taught is that we want to get. And instead we might find that by turning the equation around, by being able to give generously with love, we turn the equation around. We turn our life upside down in a good way. We shake it up. It may just be the challenge that you've been looking for, in which case I'm here. I'm holding you all in my prayers. I'm here to talk to you about it if you are interested, and I'm here to share with you as many exciting stories as I can. It's a gift. So take this along with all that Edwene has taught us, put it into practice, and see your life continue to grow and expand just like it did for her, just like it's done for me, just like it did for all those who follow the teachings. Blessings. And now we gently enter into this sacred time together, time in the silence, time for your inner world. And I invite you, if it's comfortable, to close the outer eyes or to have a soft gaze, to notice the body so that it supports you as alert and relaxed. Letting go of tension, setting it all aside for a few moments. To become still, to go within, to spiritually rest in the depth of your being. Let my breath guide me now. It brings me within, it supports me, and it leads me to this inner sanctuary of peace, of expansion, of joy. All the worries of the day drift away right now. I can pick them up later if I wish. For now, they do me no good. I let them go. And I discover underneath any thoughts, any worries, any disturbing emotions, there is a calm peace. That comes and goes without effort, supporting me, letting me know that I am life. It flows through me with ease, with constancy. I am life. More than my story. I am more than this body. I am one with all that is, and I join now consciously to feel and to know that connection place where I create the outer world. This is the place of sanctuary, a gift, a resting place, an energizing space. I let go, I breathe, I let go, I breathe, I am still. I let the silence rise up, and I rest in the silence. I am whole, I am healed. I am the light of God. Let me take this truth with me. Let me face any challenges by remembering this first and foremost. This is the place from which all comes. Peace and love, wisdom and joy. I greet every day, every moment, every person, every situation, every opportunity, remembering this: I am the one, and so it is.